in the state of California on the West Coast, and we've had good times and some tough times being the first. And some of the projects that we have worked on have been in practice for over 30 years. We worked on the Cypress Freeway, the Section D. We worked on the Charles P. Howard Terminal, which is where we designed that terminal, and it was, and that's where they want to put the Oakland Athletic baseball team at that terminal. And actually, no one has touched base with us on that because that particular facility is designed for a container terminal. And I learned about container terminals when I was in school. My professor used to come in at Stanford and he'd say container terminals are going to be the transportation facility of the future. And so I opened an office right at the Port of Oakland. And so we've done that. We also do highways, 1324 right here in the Bay Area, which is you come out of the tunnel from Walnut Creek and Highway 13 comes up. That particular interchange sits on two earthquake faults, and people here in the Bay Area know that that's the Hayward Fault. And every time there's a rumble, I get, something goes up in my throat because we have that tunnel sitting directly on an earthquake fault, and we have two bridges. And so we do bridges and tunnels, and we also work on wastewater treatment plants. We're civil engineers. We do anything. We worked on buildings going way back, some of our early projects. The Marriott Hotel over there, we were structural engineers on. We've been construction managers on, say, half of the high-rise buildings over there in Oakland. In San Francisco, we've had a number of projects, port projects. We worked on the Stanford Linear Accelerator, the longest linear accelerator in the world. We worked on the largest vehicle tunnel up in Seattle on the I-90 freeway. We were civil engineers on. We worked on the St. Regis. Not only worked on it, we were developers, development partner on that, which is a high-rise six-star hotel in San Francisco. And so we've done many things in the western U.S. We worked on BART. If you go to the airport and you see that train cross Highway 101, that's us. We designed that. And we're known to do transit structures over very busy freeways that have problems. The garter snake was an endangered species, and being environmental engineers, we know how to handle that. So we've had a number of projects. We've done over 1,000 projects in our time, and we're just very, very lucky in two respects. One is that we've not failed. We've not had a claim on any project. Secondly, we've had some of the top engineers in the country to work with us, to work in our office. And thirdly, I said we had two. Thirdly, we've associated with some of the top firms in the world.
Would you say that was
in the world?
Some of your keys to success?
Well, that's you said it. I mean, if you walk with the best, you've got to be the best.
I know that's right. I know that's right. Okay. All right. And so, having been the first black civil engineering company on this side of the country, what type of challenges, racial discrimination or any other, did you experience?
Well, being the first, you always, we almost like first everywhere. But you're gonna have challenges. I mean, when we first opened an office in Seattle, they published a national magazine, the largest engineering magazine in the world, said there's no such thing as a black civil engineering firm being able to do wastewater projects. And so the city brought us up there, and we worked on that for 4 years. So we've had challenges, and I always say to every disadvantage there's an advantage. And one advantage is that there were very, very highly qualified people that came to us to say that we can be the best. I mean, with people like Saul Cooper and the former chief engineer Bart, and all of those came. So there were many challenges. There are times that I've gone in for a project and I forget something and go out to the office and come back and I say, oh, I forgot to put something in my brochure. The guy looks around and he says, oh, okay, and he picks it out of the wastebasket. And so I just say, okay, that's okay. But we've had many challenges, but it's been a good ride. It's exciting. I always say that that not always, but I say that the difficult things we do right away, the impossible takes us a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we like the high technology. The Charles P. Howard Terminal was the most outstanding terminal design in the world. And now all terminals in earthquake zones have to follow our particular design. Also, the Port of Oakland, the terminals that the Port of Oakland is working on, 80% of their work are on terminals that we design. And our terminal was the only terminal that was untouched by the Loma Prieta earthquake. And we had just designed that terminal. And so that's proof of the pudding, you might say.
Okay. That's awesome. And so one of the things that I think sticks out about you is, you say you worked over 1,000 projects. That's big. And the things that you're naming is pretty big as far as a civil engineer goes. And how long you've been doing it, and you're still so busy, but at the same time, you are so busy in the community. That's so exciting to see, you being successful when it comes to the civil engineering side of things, but then, looking at the amount of work you have done over the years, how many boards you have sat on in the community, how many, how have you been the president of associations, national Black Chamber of Commerce board member now, also been the president of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce as well. And so, talk about, first of all, let us know what you're doing still, what you have been doing as far as your community affiliations and where you're going with that.
Well, you have a good memory. Thank you for remembering much of that. I think what takes up most of my time is with the San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce. We have a big job here. And we have gentrification, which we can talk about later on. The African American population in the city has gone from 18%, not 14, 18% down to about 3. And so we're almost extinct, you might say. But I sit on the board of the National Black Chamber of Commerce and a former chairman. Right now I chair 3 organizations. I chair an organization that is statewide, and it's APAC, the Associated Professionals and Contractors, and we had to file a Title VI to get the high-speed rail, which is the largest project in the United States. 68 billion. It's now 78 billion. We had to get the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights to see what the minority participation was. Minority participation was 0.5%. And we said, no, that is unacceptable. So we filed a Title VI. It took us 2 years. Congresswoman Barbara Lee helped us. Senator Boxer helped us out. Barbara Lee gave us a full-time staff. She's very heavily committed, and we were successful. Today, it's 19%. And the participation of minorities and women is over 500 million. The problem is that I can't identify how many African Americans are in that mix. But the fact is that went to the disabled veterans and small businesses. It's the whole thing there. So I worked on that. I sit on about 5 boards. The other organization is an NGO, meaning a non-government organization in Sierra Leone. and we're trying to fix up the medical clinic there. Our focus is to do sanitation, and because we know that's where Ebola starts. So I'm an environmental engineer also. So I'm aware that you need good sanitation, clean water, and you can't put dirty water in the stream and then bathe downstream, and the average lifespan over there is about 48 years. And so our thing is Ebola. The United States hasn't picked that up yet. We do a lot of things the United States is slow at, and but I sit on sister cities, Vietnam, for Cote d'Ivoire, and I have a good time, but I stay busy, no question.
I was just about to say, you are very busy. How do you find time to, have that balance for yourself?
Yeah. Well, so much has to do with the commitment. I kind of feel like I'm blessed. That because I had a hard time, as an African American in the engineering field, I had to learn how to do everything. I know how to do roads, infrastructure, wastewater, pure water. I say water, water, regular drinking water, potable. I had to know how to do transit, high-rise buildings, or low-rise, or whatever. I had to, and that's what Africa needs. Africa needs infrastructure. And they need to be able to do roads and clean their water up, and to dredge their facility, to dredge the waterways, put in terminals, because today, whether the United States know or whether anyone know, the economy of these developing countries are dependent upon ports. 80% of all commerce go through ports. Ports, not trucks, not trains, but ports bring that in. And so whenever we get an invitation to come, like a deep sea port or whatever in Africa or Nigeria or Cameroon or whatever, they have about 40,000 housing units around that. The Port of Oakland supports about 50,000 people or more. So ports are now the new generator of the economy. Yeah.
The import-export.
So that's it's a commitment. Yeah.
It's a commitment.
Yeah.
And so you when you're passionate about your work, it's not really work.
That's
when
correct.
you really love
Thank
what
you.
you do,
That's right.
you find the enjoyment and the joy in that.
Right.
And so that's a beautiful thing. And so, you're talking a lot about the work in Africa. It's a really an important thing. Like right now 2019 marks the 400-year mark of when slavery at the transatlantic slave trade began.
Right.
And the first enslaved African was brought to Virginia, 1619. And so they have what's going on. It's called Africa, the 400 Forward movement, where we're talking about how we're going to move forward at this time, how we're going to bring these things together, how we're going to take African people, that so-called African American of the diaspora, and collectively come together with the Native Africans and all of these different industries, including, the infrastructure building of Africa, the need for that. So talk about more where you're going with working in Africa.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point, Sharice. We celebrate what was in the past. We have Juneteenth. We celebrate the San Francisco African American Chamber, or the Black Chamber. San Francisco Black Chamber was the first in the Bay Area to celebrate Juneteenth back in the mid-'90s. I've been president 3 times of the chamber. And so we celebrate the past, but what are we going to do going forward? And maybe, I don't know about 400 years, but be good for 4 years, 40 years, to go, because we're not there yet. I mean, a lot of the millenniums think that we've arrived, and they're no longer out fighting and trying to, set the goals and whatever. But we still have to go. True, it's 400 years. They say on September the 8th, I fly back to Washington because I will be hosting about 125 of my relatives back there for the 200th anniversary of the birth of my great-great-grandfather.
Wow.
So we go back, and he's buried in the church, in the slave cemetery, right down from the church, which was established in 1699. And when you go back east, you get back some years, you know. So, but he's buried with his parents. So it's easy, and that's very typical of African Americans. And the problem is to identify going back into slavery, you know. And so, fortunately, in other countries, you're allowed to do that, you know. In Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, they have 2 million people live in the hills of Rio de Janeiro who are true Africans. They've never been changed. But in America, more than any other place, we've been disenfranchised. Our names have changed. Our culture have been obliterated. And so the only way that I know that we can reach back is to do our DNAs. And once we do our DNA, but my time right now a lot of my time is spent responding to the various African countries that ask for our services. What they have to do is to get their money together, you know. But if we can help the motherland, which we have the expertise to do, because of the African diaspora, African Americans are the ones with the expertise. You know, we have the same expertise as anybody, you know, and so we're able to go in and put a road from, to Mali or whatever they need. We're able to do that, and we have teams that are out there, like to build a stadium for the African soccer cup, you know. So that's our response. And you go back, and many people don't realize when they go back to Africa, they may go down to the store, and the people will recognize that they're African Americans. They'll say, "Welcome, my brother," you know. And so, whereas the United States is trying to figure out how they can offset China, but they have never mentioned to put African Americans out there. Those are our brothers back there.
That's right.
You know, they're still our brothers, and so they talk about bringing students over here. Those students are not going to go back, and it's unbelievable. The National Security Advisor, John Bolton, he's very concerned about how do we offset China and how do we offset Russia, but time is America is losing that battle. Unless they pick it up, we're going to be out, and all that cell phone that you have, we may not have that if China gets mad on this tariff war. And I'm just speaking from the heart.
And it's just so interesting. It's like Africa is indigenous. The indigenous people are melanin dominant people, but the melanin dominant people are not managing most of the wealth there. You know, we talk about colonization and the Berlin Conference and how generationally that's still affecting Africa and African people and us, you know. And so even like if someone who wasn't born in America came here, who was African, Native, or, you know, came and said, I just want to help the people here. I want to help my African American people here. And they come, and it's like you have to know you have to know the politics, you have to know the culture, you have to know what you're dealing with. So like when we go over there and say, hey, I want to help, it's like, how do we know? Is it a challenge to know if you're supporting the destruction and the colonization versus actually helping the people to develop and manage their own wealth?
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. And we have to evaluate that in every place we go. Evaluate, you know, which side of the fence. But right now, if it's supported by the Union, the African Development Bank, or the United Nations, we figure we're on the right side. Yeah. Yeah, we figured.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the America's Real Stimulus Package. It's real. Get real here.
Get real.
I'm
All
Sharice
right.
Nicole.
I like it.
Yes, and I've been your guest host here, sitting in for Brother Ken Johnson. I am so excited to be in San Francisco from Atlanta, and I'm loving it. And this has been an interview with Fred Jordan. Thank you so much.
All right.